You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing listeners. How are you today? Welcome, and thanks for being here with me. How many of you are feeling perhaps frustrated with your ex because there has just been zero accountability, zero acknowledgement, or very little or ownership of their choices? Or maybe it's more intense than just frustration that you feel, maybe anger, maybe rage, hurt, betrayal, confusion. Like, how can this person so blatantly ignore the fact that you are in this situation because they chose to act outside the marriage, to hide, to lie, to deceive, gaslight, all of those destructive behaviors that led to where you're at today? How do you deal? How do you heal when your ex refuses, won't own up to their choices? That's what I'm talking about today. Just a few thoughts, mainly validation for those who can relate, whether it's on a large, massive scale where it's fairly overt or whether it is showing up more covertly. You know full well what the truth is, and yet he is not owning up to it. If you're waiting for your ex to acknowledge their wrongs, apologize, sincerely apologize, right? Really understand what you've been through. If you are waiting for them to show any sign of remorse rather than maybe rubbing it in your face or still blaming you, you might find yourself waiting indefinitely. So get comfortable, because the truth is, taking responsibility for acts of betrayal, abuse require a level of self-awareness, a level of empathy, emotional maturity that not everybody reaches. And admitting fault means confronting their own shortcomings and facing the pain that they have caused, right? Embodying that, allowing that to be there. If shame rears its ugly head, then they're going to ignore that and deflect that. And most often they do that by shifting the blame, shifting the focus, and avoiding, right? Avoiding. And so they're going to holding on to hope for an apology when it is not available, when they're not capable. It's going to keep you emotionally tethered to your ex, and it's going to prevent you from fully moving forward. When your healing and your ability to move forward, your ability to feel a sense of closure is hinged on something that your ex may never give, then you are giving away your power and prolonging, really, your suffering, your injury, your trauma. Because the real work here lies in letting go of that need for an apology, the need for them to be accountable. When you focus on your own healing and finding closures within, then you can begin at that point to rebuild and reclaim your life. You are no longer going to be dependent on someone else's actions for your peace and for your well-being. All of that is true. I know that to be true personally, professionally, as I work with my clients. It is way easier said than done. Actually putting this into practice, takes sometimes 1 minute at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 step at a time. I wanted to at least give you an idea of what healing and moving through this means and looks like, and why it is so important. I want to validate, though, the feelings of hurt and betrayal and injustice. These feelings that are coming up for you are very legitimate. They're very understandable given your circumstance. It is completely natural to want your ex to acknowledge the pain that they have caused. Your feelings of hurt and betrayal are valid and deserve to be recognized and to have the person that created the injury heal. That would be ideal, right? That's the ultimate act of humanity, treating person with humanity, right? So it makes sense why that feels important to you. When we're seeking accountability, It can feel very necessary, like a very necessary step to finding your sense of closure and also making sense of what happened. When you're trying to find closure and you don't have full disclosure, full accountability, full acknowledgement, then it is going to feel confusing. It's going to leave you feeling stuck in your healing, especially when, like I said before, we are only trying to derive that from this external source, from this person, from your ex. They might not even own up to the infidelity, right? Making excuses when you found evidence. Your body knows about infidelity, but they're going to continue to make excuses. They're going to avoid answering the details, answering your questions, and that's going to keep you from having closure. Or they're just going to flat out lie to other people about the infidelity, twisting truths, telling half truths. They might refuse to give you information that impacts your health, like STIs, with all of the lying, and it just manifests your symptoms of PTSD. Even if you cut them, it is incredible how many will still deny, blame, and shift the focus off of the actual act of betrayal and place it onto something that you did, even suggesting that you caused it, which is bullshit, by the way. There might be an avoidance to any abuse, which, guess what? If there was infidelity and it wasn't disclosed right away, then that is abuse, because it takes abusive behavior and communication to hide that, to keep you from the reality of that. Substance abuse can be denied, hiding the fact that maybe they were addicted to prescription drugs, using them to further abuse you, confuse you. Any other substances that they can justify where you and the kids and the family were impacted. Financial injury from their choices can be unacknowledged, denied. And again, that blame shifted onto you. There's lots of ways, right? Ways in which you don't have full information around, and ways in which they are not fully accounting for, and all of this injury that has been caused. It's interesting because I've noticed that when there isn't full accountability and ownership from the one who betrayed, injured, and abused, then it makes the times when maybe they do, quote, show up or seem agreeable more confusing in a lot of ways, especially when they will capitalize on that one time they showed up or the one small thing that they did do, as if it makes up for all that they are still denying and ignoring and deflecting and have done. For example, let's say there's a huge child support arrears, like years without paying anything, years maybe with little here, little there, but never consistency, never acknowledging that they're shirking their responsibilities to children and that you've worked so effing hard to make up for their lack of financial support. And so in order to support the kids on your own because they've been unreliable, when there hasn't been any of that acknowledgement of the thousands and thousands of dollars spent on the things that kids need and want, that you made sure somehow they would get. And then maybe they pay $100 towards, $170,000 in arrears. It is a wildly strange space of anger because the $100 compared to the years of nothing seems like almost a joke. Perhaps there's doubt that shows up because you know that this means they're up to something. They want something. They're trying to look good to others by paying that little bit of child support. Now they can say, maybe I pay child support. But even if it was the full arrears amount of a payment, it doesn't come with accountability, acknowledgement, no owning up to the consequence in the years of not and the impact of what you've had to do to make up for that. So are you supposed to feel gratitude? Confusing, right? The emotional toil that it takes on you when there's no accountability, acknowledgement, transparency, honesty, the conflict that it creates in you is very real. I remember feeling like if I don't hold him accountable or point out that he's not being accountable, then it means he's getting away with it. And that is just infuriating, right? You may feel like they have been or are getting away with so much. So this deep desire, almost a hypervigilance to make sure that they don't get away with it, can sometimes seem useful. until it's not. I know that men can go to jail multiple times and still not own up to their choices or be accountable. It's not going to come from you. You can't do this for them. And it's doing more harm to you when you are trying to hold them accountable. So, first, you've got to create some personal limits and boundaries with you, whether it's you are no longer going to remind, teach, lecture, or otherwise enforce these rules in his life or try to get him to be accountable. That would be a self boundary. Now, let me be very clear. I don't want to be misheard here. This is not roll over and let them do whatever the hell they want, and you have to deal with it. For example, let's go back to the child support example. You can report every month when they do not pay if you want to. But the limit for yourself would be not to text or email them about it. Perhaps limit the amount of times that you maybe tell other people, right, that you want to rehash your frustration about it. Like, once again, he didn't pay child support. Can you believe it? Because that's rehashing it. That's creating the emotional tie to it over and over. And that is what is impacting you. So you can follow through legally, but let go of the emotional tie. Y'all know that I used to clean houses, and my sweet clients, bless their hearts, would listen to me rehash things over and over, what he was doing. Every week would be, oh my gosh, you'll never guess what he did now. Oh my gosh, can you believe? Wait till you hear this. I mean, some of my clients actually loved it because it was like their weekly soap opera. Or they'd say, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see what happens next time. Like every week they'd get like the next chapter to this mystery novel. Right? I mean, it can be super validating at first, but at some point, you'll need to really check in with yourself and determine when it isn't actually serving you anymore. And maybe if it's keeping you tied to him emotionally, right? Because when you're trying to figure him out, when you're trying to understand how can he, why won't he, what in the hell, you are picking up the rope and tying it around yourself. When you take it to that next level of trying to figure them out, trying to understand, it's not helping you and it's not going to change them or the situation. And gosh dang, isn't this hard? I think more so outside of trying to get them to own up, right, to what they have done and the consequences of it all. I think it's this why, like, why did they do this in the first place? All of those unknowns and not having answers to those questions, I often see this being at the root. Them not owning up is frustrating and all the things, but not knowing why they did this to begin with, what led to these choices and the missing pieces of these truths for you can really be at the root of the anger of him not owning up to his choices. When why isn't solved for, when we don't have the answers to the why questions, then the amygdala gets active, the fear center of the brain. It becomes highly active and it continues to signal danger, danger, keeping that body in that state of heightened alert, trying to find the why because it doesn't have the answer to it. But your human brain is wired to seek meaning. It's wired to try and understand your experiences. So when it can't make sense of it, then you have cognitive dissonance, right? You have conflicting beliefs that it just can't reconcile. I think it's really important to keep in mind that you may really be trying to understand the why. When you can't, then you're hyper focused on the how. How could he? How is he not? How in the world does he not see what he's done? When they won't own up to their choices and when their choices have created such harm for you and your children, accepting the reality of this and what's happened allows for that beginning of true healing, to acknowledge the situation that it's out of your control can really set you free rather than continue to disempower you. So you stay focused on the present. This is step one, is accepting the truth and staying present with your truth today. Presence is actually one of the 5 P's of IFS. that when you are practicing to be present, you access your agency, you access your higher self because you can't make choices. There's no choosing outside of present moment. And choosing today is what creates your tomorrow. That's funny. That actually just sounded like a Kung Fu Panda quote. But for reals, like today is what creates tomorrow. We get stuck in the tomorrow. We try to make choices in the future, but it just doesn't work that way. So by acknowledging the reality, by accepting what is, we bring ourselves back to the present. You can also reframe your internal dialogue. Reframe can help get you unstuck from trying to get them to own up to it or feeling stuck when they aren't. Then reframe it. When we think, why can't he just admit what he's done? How can he not own up to this? We can move to, how can I move forward despite this? Just shifting your thoughts a little bit can help you get unstuck and move you out of the tomorrow and into today, move you out of future into the now. Remember, when others can't take responsibility for their choices, it is rooted in their own pain, their own personal limitation. It really isn't often about you. Boundaries are the other thing that's going to help you here, help you move forward, because when they won't own up, being boundary with your emotions with someone who is not safe protects your emotions. So limit your interactions, limit your communication, and take the emotion out of it when you are dealing with someone who uses those emotions to further excuse their actions. And especially when there's that blame shifting, your emotions are going to be weaponized. And so you take that out of it. You protect your emotions. You move into business. My dad used to say, put your business hat on, Aim. You've got to step into the business transaction because it's not safe for your emotions to be involved. Many of you are motivated by your children and what's best for them, right? Well, your children get less of you when you are focused on him. So letting go of what he was or wasn't doing and isn't doing today helped me focus on how I can show up for my kids and give them what they need and make that happen when it was clear that he wasn't going to. All of that energy needed to shift for me. All of that energy needed to shift from him to them. And originally, I thought that I was doing it for them at first, right? Like, I need to hold him accountable. I need to make him responsible. He needs to for them. But like, I need to fight for them. But the fight was just sucking me dry. And I didn't have a whole lot left really to show up for them. It's really strange because I've heard this enough times from my clients, and I've experienced it too, that I believe there's something to this. But things felt so hard and so heavy when I was with him. Like the thought of doing life on my own when I was already experiencing so much hard and so much heavy just felt like it would be tons harder, right? The thought of, oh my gosh, I don't know how I can do hard on my own because it's already hard with him. I don't know how I'm going to do hard alone. And the reality is, and again, what I've heard with a lot of my clients too, the reality is that doing my hard was much easier than being impacted by his. Sifting through my own junk pile felt way better than sifting through his junk pile. So letting go of the need for him to apologize, the need for him to be accountable, the need for him to be responsible for his choices that impacted you and the children. Letting go of holding his feet to the fire, believing that somehow it would set you free is how you start to heal, is how you actually start to step into your power and have an empowered divorce. The last thing is self-respect. Sometimes focusing on your ex's refusal to take this responsibility or show remorse can often be a way to self-protect from your own deeper pain of looking within. One of the things that I tell my divorced ladies who are wanting to get into another relationship or wanting to move forward and consider another relationship, we have to look at our past. We have to look at parts of us that existed in our past. And that can be really painful. And so sometimes by holding our ex to the fire and getting them to be accountable for it, there's this subconscious belief that it will eliminate this deeper pain. It's natural to want acknowledgement for the hurt that you've endured, but it's also very important to consider what you can learn about yourself and what you've experienced from within, from your body, from your own self, without needing him to be in charge of that, without needing his part in your healing to actually get your healing. Reflecting on maybe why an apology or a display of remorse has become so central to your ability to move forward can really open up space for your own growth and your own sense of empowerment. When you turn inward and start nurturing your inner wisdom and these wounded parts, you can start to begin to rise above that need for external validation and him needing to do something, or other people who caused harm to do something. And you can start to reclaim your power in your healing process. This is how you have an empowered divorce. Hopefully today you have felt validated. Hopefully today, more than anything, you have felt validated as to maybe why this is showing up. Maybe you can create some awareness as to, oh, this is why I'm feeling stuck. And hopefully you have a couple things that you can focus on, like acceptance, being present in the now, making choices from this present space, implementing boundaries for yourself to help protect you, protect your emotions, letting go and saving that energy that you're using to hold his feet to the fire to better show up in your life and for your children in the way that you want, and respecting yourself enough to look into yourself and look at these parts. Maybe subconsciously we're ignoring them while we are holding his feet to the fire. Take some time to explore what comes up for you with what I offered today. Hopefully you have some things to work on to help you let go and move forward, despite the fact that your ex is not owning up to any of it, or that you are not getting an apology or any sense of accountability. It doesn't have to limit you. It doesn't have to hold you back or keep you stuck, because thank God you don't need that to heal. You don't need that to live. And you certainly don't need that to create the life that you want, because you absolutely have everything inside of you to create the life that you want, because you can. Take care, everybody. Tonight, Dating from Within workshop starts. It is not too late. I'd love to have you learn how to see the parts of you that showed up in your past relationship. And let's make sure those parts know that you are wanting a completely different relationship. Come learn about what level of energy you are showing up in. There's 7. This awareness is going to help you see why you're getting the results that you are around dating, especially if those results are that you are dating. I'm going to give tips and tricks, so much information, 2 hours each evening, all recorded, workbook included, live Q&A the last night with my husband Scott to ask a guy anything. Come join me. Register now, amiewoolsey.com, or click the link in the show notes. I will see you there.